Sit back, relax, and welcome to Reading Hours. Today's book is A Song of Ice and Fire, A Game of Thrones by R.R. Martin. Please let us know in the comments from where you are watching, or if there is a book you want us to summarize in future. In 1996, George R.R. Martin unleashed A Game of Thrones, the first volume of what would become one of the most iconic and ambitious fantasy epics of all time, A Song of Ice and Fire. Drawing inspiration from real historical conflicts like the Wars of the Roses, and weaving in elements of high fantasy, political intrigue, and brutal realism, Martin set out to create a world where no character is safe. Power is fleeting, and the line between hero and villain is often blurred. Set in the vast, richly imagined continents of Westeros and Essos, A Game of Thrones introduces readers to a sprawling cast of characters: noble lords, cunning queens, exiled heirs, ambitious knights, and a trio of orphaned dragon eggs, each navigating a web of loyalty, betrayal, ambition, and survival. Unlike many fantasy novels, Martin's saga does not promise a clear triumph of good over evil. Instead, it explores how power corrupts, how history repeats, and how the decisions of kings and commoners alike ripple across generations. The book was both praised and criticized for its willingness to subvert fantasy tropes, most famously by killing off characters previously thought central to the story. Its success, and the popularity of the HBO television adaptation that followed in 2011, brought the world of Westeros into global consciousness, but also stirred debates among fans about violence, gender roles, and the pace of the ongoing series. As we delve into this long-form summary, we'll stay faithful to Martin's storytelling, its grit, depth, and unpredictability, while making the complex plot lines engaging and accessible for your viewers. Now, let's cross the threshold into Westeros, where winter is coming and thrones are won through blood and fire. The book opens in the frozen wilds beyond the Wall, where the men of the Knights watch ride through the haunted forest. Their mission is simple reconnaissance, but something ancient and terrible stirs in the snow-covered woods. Will, Gerd, and Sir Waymar Royce find not wildlings, but white-eyed, silent figures, the others, creatures of myth and death. In a flurry of frost and fear, Sir Waymar is slain by one of the others, his sword shattering like glass. Will survives only long enough to flee and later to face execution. South of the Wall, in the vast, windswept lands of the north, Eddard Ned Stark, Lord of Winterfell, dispenses justice in the old way. With his sons Bran, Robb, and Jon Snow watching, Ned beheads Will for desertion, upholding the ancient northern belief: the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. On the return to Winterfell, the group comes upon a dead direwolf, sigil of House Stark, killed by a broken antler lodged in its throat. 5 living pups, one for each of Ned's true-born children, are found beside the body. Jon Snow, Ned's illegitimate son, finds a 6th, a rare albino runt, and claims it as his own. It's a quiet omen of the fates entwined with the Stark children. At Winterfell, peace and routine hold sway. Ned rules with a stern but honorable hand, his wife Catelyn Stark tending to their household and children. The tranquility is interrupted by the arrival of King Robert Baratheon and his royal court. A mountain of a man gone soft with wine and weariness, Robert is Ned's old friend and comrade in arms from their rebellion against the Targaryen dynasty. he comes not only to hunt and feast, but to ask Ned to become the new hand of the king, replacing Jon Arryn, mentor to both men, who died under suspicious circumstances. Robert's queen, the beautiful and shrewd Cersei Lannister, arrives with her powerful family, including her twin brother Jaime, known as the Kingslayer for killing the mad King Aerys, and their younger brother Tyrion, a sharp-witted dwarf whose intelligence is often underestimated. Their presence brings tension to Winterfell, especially as Catelyn receives a secret letter from her sister Lysa, widow of Jon Arryn, claiming that the Lannisters were behind her husband's death. Ned is reluctant to leave his family and responsibilities in the north, but duty, friendship, and the suspicion of murder compel him. He agrees to ride south with King Robert, taking his daughters, Sansa and Arya, to court with him. His young son Bran, curious and adventurous, climbs a tower and unknowingly stumbles upon a shocking scene: Queen Cersei in bed with her brother Jaime. Before Bran can escape, Jaime coldly says, "The things I do for love," and pushes him from the tower. As Bran lies unconscious, the consequences of court intrigue begin to unravel. Catelyn, consumed with worry and suspicion, remains at Bran's bedside while Ned departs. Robb takes up more responsibility at Winterfell, while Jon Snow, unable to follow Ned to court or remain as a constant reminder of his bastardy, decides to join the Night's Watch at the Wall. Tyrion Lannister, intrigued by the North and eager to escape the scrutiny of his family, decides to journey with him. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, a different story unfolds. In the free cities of Essos, the last remnants of the once mighty Targaryen dynasty struggle in exile. Viserys Targaryen, the deposed heir, is obsessed with reclaiming the Iron Throne. To achieve this, he sells his younger sister, Daenerys, into marriage with Khal Drogo, a powerful warlord of the nomadic Dothraki. Daenerys, young and terrified, is given dragon eggs as a wedding gift, fossils, or so they seem. Despite her brother's cruelty and the alien nature of Dothraki life, Daenerys begins to find strength within herself, drawing power from the fire of her bloodline and the harsh freedom of her new world. Back in Westeros, Bran survives his fall but is left paralyzed. An assassin attempts to murder him in his sleep, wielding a Valyrian steel dagger. Catelyn foils the attack and suspects foul play, especially when the blade is traced to Tyrion Lannister. She sets out to King's Landing to warn Ned, while also taking the bold step of seizing Tyrion on the road, igniting a series of events that will unravel peace across the realm. As the political storm gathers, Ned rides south into the lion's den of King's Landing, unaware that the throne his friend Robert sits upon is more fragile and more deadly than it appears. The road south to King's Landing winds long and treacherous, and not just for its terrain. For Eddard Stark, the journey is one of both political obligation and reluctant farewell. He leaves behind the icy familiarity of Winterfell and a son in a coma, traded for the scorching, rumor-laden corridors of royal power. Beside him ride his daughters, Sansa and Arya, two girls as different as the sun and the moon. Sansa, the elder, dreams of courtly life and royal matches. Arya, wild, spirited, and unladylike by Westerosi standards, bristles at the expectations set before her. Tensions among the travelers begin to reveal themselves. Arya clashes with Prince Joffrey Baratheon, the crown prince and betrothed to Sansa. When Arya's friend, a low-born boy named Micah, is bullied by Joffrey during a forest ride, Arya intervenes. The confrontation escalates. Nymeria, Arya's direwolf, bites the prince to protect her. Fearing punishment, Arya flees and sends Nymeria away into the wild. Joffrey, wounded more in pride than body, exaggerates the incident to his parents. Queen Cersei, seeking retribution, demands consequences. Arya is spared, but her friend Mycah is killed by Sandor Clegane, the Hound under Cersei's orders. Worse still, Lady Sansa's direwolf is executed in Nymeria's place by Ned himself to fulfill the king's demand for justice and keep the peace. It is a bitter moment that sets the tone for what lies ahead. The realm of kings and queens has no space for justice without politics. Upon arriving at King's Landing, Ned is immersed in the capital's corrosive atmosphere. The city is crowded, full of whispers and shifting loyalties. The small council welcomes him formally, but offers little real guidance. The members include Lord Petter Baelish, known as Littlefinger, who wears mischief like a cloak and masks ambition behind a smile. Varys, the eunuch spymaster with eyes and ears in every corner. Grand Maester Pycelle, ancient and doddering yet still politically potent. And Renly Baratheon, the king's younger brother, charming but largely uninterested in governance. It's clear from the start that the council serves its own interests as much as the king's. Ned quickly discovers that the realm is drowning in debt, largely due to Robert's extravagant spending. The crown owes massive sums to the Lannisters, which tightens their grip on power. Robert, meanwhile, remains aloof, more interested in tourneys, hunting, and drinking than the responsibilities of kingship. He insists on hosting a lavish tournament in Ned's honor, despite the kingdom's financial distress. For Ned, a man of honor and practicality, the pageantry feels empty, almost grotesque. In the Red Keep, the tension between the Starks and Lannisters simmers dangerously. Sansa, still enamored with the idea of being queen, idolizes Joffrey and distances herself from her sister. Arya, grieving lady and furious over the injustice to Mycah, finds solace in training with a Braavosi swordmaster named Syrio Forel. Under Syrio's tutelage, she learns to move like water, her wooden practice sword an extension of a growing resilience. Arya's lessons are more than swordplay, they're survival. While Ned navigates court politics, Catelyn Stark arrives in King's Landing in secret. She brings news of the attempt on Bran's life and the dagger traced back to Tyrion Lannister. Ned is alarmed. Though he distrusts the Lannisters, he also doubts Tyrion's motive to commit such an act, especially so recklessly. Littlefinger, who still harbors affection for Catelyn from their youth, pledges his help. He offers Ned access to his network of informants and escorts him to the brothel where Jon Arryn had begun his final investigation. Jon Arryn's death grows increasingly suspicious. He had been examining a line of bastards, Robert's illegitimate children, scattered throughout King's Landing. Ned follows his trail, visiting one of these children, a black-haired boy with striking Baratheon features, clearly of Robert's blood. Ned begins to suspect that Jon Arryn discovered something damning, something that got him killed. Back in the north, trouble brews. Tyrion Lannister, having parted ways with Jon Snow at the Wall after seeing the grim reality of the Night's Watch, is taken prisoner by Catelyn Stark as she travels through the Vale. Her plan is bold, to bring Tyrion to her sister Lysa Arryn, now Lady of the Eyrie, to answer for the attempted murder of Bran. The journey is perilous, with Catelyn relying on the loyalty of her father's bannermen to escort her. Tyrion, ever composed, plays the game with words, denying involvement and needling Catelyn's every move with dry humor and sharp intellect. Upon arriving at the Eyrie, Catelyn finds her sister changed, paranoid, unstable, and fiercely protective of her sickly son, Robert Arryn. Lysa demands vengeance against Tyrion without proper trial, forcing him into a trial by combat. A sellsword named Bronn steps forward to fight on Tyrion's behalf. Bronn's agile, ruthless tactics win the day, securing Tyrion's freedom and dealing a blow to the Stark cause in the eyes of the Vale's nobility. Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's transformation begins to unfold. Once a frightened girl, she now begins to take root among the Dothraki. Her marriage to Khal Drogo, though traumatic at first, evolves into something deeper. She learns their customs, rides with them, eats their food, and embraces her role as Khaleesi. Her brother Viserys, however, cannot adapt. His desperation for a crown leads him to insult Drogo one too many times. In one unforgettable moment, Daenerys watches as Drogo grants Viserys the golden crown he was promised. Molten gold poured over his head, killing him instantly. For Daenerys, it is a dark liberation. The last chain binding her to her old life is broken. As events spiral across continents, Bran awakens in Winterfell, robbed of mobility but alive. His dreams are strange, filled with a three-eyed crow that calls him to fly. Beyond the Wall, Jon Snow begins to understand that the Night's Watch is no noble order. It is filled with criminals, orphans, and the discarded. Still, he finds camaraderie and purpose among them. He begins training, eventually distinguishing himself. But even in the icy darkness, a greater threat looms. The old things are stirring in the woods, and the dead do not always stay dead. Far south, Ned Stark continues to pull on the tangled threads left behind by Jon Arryn. What he discovers next will put him on a collision course with the most powerful family in Westeros, and the truth will come at a grave cost. The secrets of the capital whisper louder with each passing day, and Lord Eddard Stark finds himself immersed in a world far different from the honor bound north. The Red Keep, with its sprawling corridors and veiled intentions, is no place for straightforward men. As Ned continues unraveling the mystery surrounding Jon Arryn's death, he grows more troubled by what lies beneath the surface of Robert Baratheon's court. The king he once called a brother is now a shadow of that man, bloated by drink, dulled by indulgence, and blind to the treacherous currents around him. Robert's mind remains fixed on the tournament held in Ned's honor, a gaudy distraction that draws knights and lords from every corner of the realm. Amid the spectacle of banners and blood, Ned watches uneasily. Gregor Clegane, known as the Mountain That Rides, displays his brutal strength on the field, his violence barely contained even in the confines of the tourney. When Sir Hugh of the Vale, a newly knighted young man, dies from a lance through the throat, the incident raises suspicions. Sir Hugh had once been Jon Arryn's squire. Was it a coincidence or another link in the chain of silenced truths? Despite these distractions, Ned remains focused on the trail left by Jon Arryn. He meets another of Robert's bastards, a dark-haired baby in the arms of a common woman. The pattern becomes unmistakable. Each child carries the unmistakable Baratheon features, unlike the golden-haired Baratheon children raised in the Red Keep. Ned's unease deepens. Jon Arryn must have come to the same conclusion before his death. Could Robert's heirs not be his heirs at all? Across the city, Littlefinger remains a constant presence at Ned's side, offering guidance cloaked in riddles and half-truths. Petyr Baelish is a man who thrives in the shadows, feeding off secrets like a spider in its web. He arranges for Ned to explore deeper into Jon Arryn's final days and warns him to trust no one, especially the Queen. Ned doesn't trust Littlefinger either, but he has little choice. In King's Landing, alliances are rarely about loyalty. They are forged in necessity. As these quiet investigations unfold, the Starks continue to unravel. Arya trains in secret with Syrio Forel, learning to see with more than her eyes, to listen to silence, and to dance with shadows. She begins to shed the skin of a noble girl and becomes something sharper, something freer. Sansa, meanwhile, is consumed by dreams of courtly romance. Her adoration for Joffrey blinds her to his cruelty, and her loyalty to the crown often conflicts with her Stark blood. A rift grows between the sisters, each pulled by opposing forces in this dangerous new world. Far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen now stands transformed. No longer the frightened girl sold into marriage, she moves with the confidence of a queen in the making. Under the vast skies of the Dothraki Sea, she rides with Khal Drogo and his Khalasar, her belly beginning to swell with the first signs of life. She is pregnant, and the Dothraki celebrate the unborn child as the stallion who mounts the world, a prophesied conqueror. Her confidence, however, breeds unease among some in the Khalasar, especially her handmaidens and Ser Jorah Mormont, the Westerosi exile who shadows her every move. Jorah, though loyal to Daenerys, is not without secrets. He writes to King Robert's court in secret, offering information on the last Targaryens. His loyalty is complicated by a longing for home and a past marred by dishonor. Yet, he sees something in Daenerys, a spark of destiny, a power growing with each passing day. When Daenerys eats a raw horse heart during a Dothraki ritual without flinching, even hardened warriors begin to view her with awe. Viserys, on the other hand, finds himself increasingly isolated. His rants about crowns and birthrights fall on deaf ears. He fails to understand that his sister has become the true heir in the eyes of their people, not because of blood, but because of fire and strength. Back at the Wall, Jon Snow begins to carve out a place for himself among the Night's Watch. The Brotherhood is no band of heroes, but Jon's skill with a blade and his sense of leadership set him apart. He befriends Samwell Tarly, a cowardly and soft-spoken boy who arrives at Castle Black with more fear than hope. Mocked and bullied by the others, Sam finds protection in Jon, who convinces his brothers in arms to ease their torment. With Jon's help, Sam is accepted, proof that even in the coldest places, bonds of compassion can still be forged. The Lord Commander, Jeor Mormont, begins to take notice of Jon's leadership. Ghost, Jon's silent direwolf, remains his constant companion, an eerie presence with glowing red eyes and an uncanny ability to sense danger. Beyond the Wall, rangers begin to vanish. Benjen Stark, Jon's uncle, departs on a mission and never returns. Then comes news that 2 of the missing rangers have been found dead, yet strangely unmarked by decay. When their bodies reanimate within the walls of Castle Black, attacking those around them, Jon and Ghost save Mormont's life by burning the Whites. The reality sinks in. The old stories of what lies beyond the Wall are not merely legends. something dark and ancient stirs in the wilderness. In the Vale, Tyrion Lannister travels cautiously after his release, accompanied by the sellsword Bronn. They make their way south, but the road is far from safe. They are ambushed by mountain clans and forced to fight for their survival. Tyrion's wit and gold win him unexpected allies among the clans, who agree to follow him in exchange for promises of land and riches once they reach the Lannisters. Meanwhile, in the capital, tensions mount. Ned confronts Cersei Lannister with the truth he has uncovered. Her children are not Robert's, but James. He gives her a chance to flee before he tells the king. But Cersei is not a woman to run. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die, she tells him. Ned's honor gives her time, and in that time she moves. Before Ned can reveal the truth, Robert suffers a mortal wound while hunting. A boar's tusk tears through him, and as he lies dying, he names Ned as protector of the realm until Joffrey comes of age. But the document Robert signs is subtly altered by Ned. He writes rightful heir instead of Joffrey's name, believing Stannis Baratheon to be the legitimate successor. It is a small act, but one of immense consequence. As Robert dies, Cersei strikes. Ned's trust and honor becomes his greatest weakness in a city ruled by deceit. The stage is set for betrayal, and the first blood of civil war is about to be spilled. The king is dead, and the game begins in earnest. With Robert Baratheon's final breath, the fragile balance of power that held the realm together collapses. Eddard Stark, bound by duty and honor, clutches a signed royal decree naming him protector of the realm, believing it his shield against the coming storm. But in King's Landing, honor is rarely a match for ambition. As Ned prepares to reveal the truth of Joffrey's parentage and place Stannis Baratheon on the throne, he underestimates the web of lies spun by the Lannisters and the silence bought by gold. Petyr Baelish, sly and self-assured, promises Ned the backing of the City Watch should the need arise. Ned, uneasy but trusting, believes he has secured enough power to ensure a peaceful transition. But trust in Littlefinger is as deadly as a dagger in the dark. When Ned confronts the small council and asserts Stannis' claim, Cersei strikes first. Joffrey declares himself king, and when Ned presents Robert's decree, it is dismissed and torn apart. The City Watch, instead of defending him, turns on him at Littlefinger's command. "I did warn you not to trust me," Baelish whispers, as the gold cloaks cut down Ned's men and seize him. Outside the Red Keep, chaos ripples across the city. The lion has roared, and blood begins to flow. Sansa, desperate and terrified, is held as a hostage. Arya, guided by Syrio Forel's last lesson and the grace he bought with his life, flees into the city's underbelly. She disappears into the streets, clutching needle and clinging to survival, her path now forever changed. Far to the south at Winterfell, young Bran begins to dream. In sleep, he flies not in body, but in spirit, soaring above the land, watching with the eyes of a wolf. The dreams are vivid, strange, and laced with old magic. Maester Luwin dismisses them as imagination, but the old stories are stirring again, and Bran, crippled yet awakening, may be touched by something ancient. The direwolves remain ever close to the Stark children, growing wilder, as if sensing the fracture of the realm. At the Wall, Jon Snow faces a different conflict. As the realm begins to fracture, news of Ned Stark's arrest reaches Castle Black. Rage and grief twist inside him, and he contemplates breaking his vows to ride south and fight for his family. But the old oath is sacred, and the Night's Watch forbids desertion. Torn between blood and duty, Jon chooses to stay, only to flee in the dead of night. It is Ghost who finds him, and it is his brothers who bring him back. But in that act, Jon's loyalty is tested, and he returns willingly to face punishment. Jeor Mormont, however, sees in him not betrayal, but passion. The Lord Commander does not punish Jon, but instead names him his steward, placing him closer to command than Jon ever expected. The appointment is both honor and burden, for Mormont plans to ride beyond the wall, into the unknown, and Jon is to go with him. Meanwhile, in the far eastern lands, Daenerys Targaryen's transformation reaches its zenith. When her brother Viserys threatens her once more, this time in front of the entire Khalasar, demanding the crown he was promised, Khal Drogo answers. In a haunting, brutal act, Drogo melts gold in a pot and pours it over Viserys' head, crowning him with molten death. "He was no dragon," Daenerys says coldly. "Fire cannot kill a dragon." The boy who once thought himself king dies screaming, but the sister he mocked stands serene, hardened by the fire of her journey. Daenerys grows in stature among the Dothraki. She embraces their ways, learns their language, and asserts herself not as Drogo's prize, but as his equal. The unborn child within her is revered, and even hardened warriors begin to look upon her with awe. Yet not all is secure. When Drogo agrees to cross the narrow sea and conquer Westeros for her, he does so reluctantly, spurred by an insult to his queen. This promise, noble in intent, sets a series of dire events into motion. While raiding a village for supplies to fund their crossing, Drogo is wounded. The cut festers, and despite Daenerys' protests, he refuses to treat it the Dothraki way. She turns to Mirri Maz Duur, a healer and slave taken from the village, who offers her services. When Drogo's condition worsens, Daenerys begs Mirri to save him at any cost. The woman warns her, only death can pay for life. Daenerys consents, believing she can control the magic, but the cost is far greater than she could have imagined. Back in the Seven Kingdoms, Robb Stark, now the Lord of Winterfell in all but name, calls his banners. With his father imprisoned and his sisters held hostage, he marches south, a boy of 15 leading the North to war. The great houses of the North answer the call: Karstark, Umber, Manderley, and soon an army gathers beneath the direwolf banner. Catelyn rides to meet her son, and she finds him changed. The boy is gone, replaced by a young lord forced to make decisions too heavy for his years. Together, they plan their path forward. They must cross the Twins, a bridge held by the cunning and ancient Walder Frey. The cost of passage is steep, promises of marriage and future alliance. Robb agrees, and the Stark host crosses into the Riverlands. The war now begins in earnest. Robb splits his army, sending part under Roose Bolton to engage Tywin Lannister, while he takes a smaller force to strike at Jaime Lannister directly. It is a bold move, one driven by instinct and pride. If it fails, the North will bleed. The pieces now move swiftly on the board. Jaime Lannister's forces are engaged at Riverrun, where Catelyn's brother Edmure is besieged. Robb's gamble pays off. In the Whispering Wood, he captures Jaime Lannister in a surprise night attack, turning the tide of war in the North's favor. The young wolf, as the men begin to call him, shows promise as a leader. But even in victory, the cost is high. Lords fall, men die, and the realm slides further into darkness. In the capital, Sansa begs for mercy for her father. Joffrey, now seated on the Iron Throne, promises clemency if Ned will confess to treason and recognize him as king. Cersei, seeking to stabilize her position, agrees. Varys, the master of whispers, persuades Ned to choose mercy over pride for Sansa's sake, for Arya's, and for peace. Beaten, imprisoned, and betrayed, Eddard Stark chooses dishonor to protect his daughters. But mercy has no place in the heart of a boy king. As Ned confesses on the steps of the Great Sept, expecting exile to the wall, Joffrey orders his execution instead against the advice of his mother and council. Before the horrified eyes of Sansa, and with Arya hidden in the crowd, Ned Stark is beheaded. The crowd screams, the birds scatter, and the wheel of vengeance begins to turn. Across the narrow sea, a scream echoes as Daenerys goes into labor. And in the realm of men, another star falls. The North will not forget, and winter, at last, is coming. The death of Eddard Stark sends a shockwave through the Seven Kingdoms, splintering the realm into factions and fanning the flames of rebellion. In the North, the news arrives like a bitter wind over the snows of Winterfell. Grief turns quickly into fury. At Riverrun, Robb Stark and his bannermen, stunned by the dishonorable execution, gather in a great hall to decide the future. The lords of the North, long quiet under Southern rule, raise their voices together, naming Robb not merely as Lord of Winterfell, but as king in the North. For the first time since the days of Torrhen Stark, the North declares independence. The old words echo through the stone, the king in the North. The realm has cracked, and out of the break rises war. South of the Neck, the riverlands burn. Tywin Lannister, cold and calculating, sends his forces to continue pressing the Tullys and subdue Robb's uprising. But his golden lions meet fierce resistance. Jaime Lannister remains a prisoner of the Starks, held under heavy guard, a valuable hostage in a conflict growing bloodier by the day. Catelyn Stark watches her son ascend in command and respect, proud but fearful. War may offer honor, but it is seldom merciful. Back in King's Landing, chaos reigns in silence. The small council reorients itself under the weight of Joffrey's reckless rule. Cersei Lannister clings to power, attempting to direct her son's cruelty. But Joffrey, emboldened by his crown, proves increasingly difficult to contain. Sansa Stark becomes a prisoner in a silk cage, a broken dove forced to smile at the boy who murdered her father. She learns quickly that survival in the capital requires more than tears. She bends, but does not break. Arya, meanwhile, vanishes from the eyes of the court. Disguised as a boy named Arai, she joins a group of Night's Watch recruits being sent north, including the amiable fat boy Hot Pie, the quiet Lamy Greenhands, and the fierce but loyal Gendry, bastard of King Robert, though he knows it not. Their journey is long and filled with danger. With every mile, Arya drifts further from the girl she once was, and closer to something colder, sharper. The blade of revenge begins to take shape in her heart, and Needle, ever by her side, becomes an extension of her will. In the Reach, Renly Baratheon, youngest brother of the late king, makes a stunning move. With the backing of House Tyrell, whose forces and resources make them a powerful ally, Renly declares himself king, despite having no better claim than his older brother Stannis. He is handsome, well-liked, and surrounded by men who adore him, including Sir Loras Tyrell, the Knight of Flowers. But charm and ambition may not be enough. While Renly courts lords and hosts feasts, Stannis broods on Dragonstone, the ancient seat of House Targaryen, preparing his own claim with a more dire tool, fire and faith. Stannis is stiff, grim, and unyielding, but his case is lawful. He is the true heir under the line of succession, yet few rally to his banner until he aligns himself with Melisandre, a red priestess of Arlor, the Lord of Light. Her power is mysterious, her presence unsettling, but her conviction is unwavering. She proclaims Stannis the chosen one, the reborn hero Azor Ahai. Stannis burns the statues of the Seven, embracing the fiery new god, and those who follow him do so under the shadow of burning idols. His ships begin to gather, his soldiers train in earnest, and though his army is small, his resolve is terrifying. Far to the east, across the smoking waters and red sands, Daenerys Targaryen faces the price of her desperation. The blood magic that saved Drogo's life has left him an empty shell, breathing but vacant. The price Mirri Maz Duur demanded was steep indeed. Their unborn child, once hailed as the stallion who mounts the world, is born twisted and still. Daenerys, devastated, sits beside her silent husband, her dreams turn to ash. In the end, she smothers Khal Drogo with a pillow, releasing him from his hollow fate. Her Khalasar dissolves. Many abandon her. She is left with a handful of loyal followers, 3 petrified dragon eggs, and a funeral pyre. But fire, as she will learn, is not only a destroyer, it is a birthright. On the night of Drogo's cremation, Daenerys steps into the flames. Those who watch believe it's suicide. But as the fire roars and dawn breaks, a miracle takes shape. She emerges unburnt, ash-covered, naked and alive, 3 infant dragons clinging to her shoulders. The ancient, forgotten beasts of Valyria have returned. The Dothraki kneel in awe. Daenerys is no longer just a Targaryen, she is the mother of dragons. In that moment, she claims not only her house's legacy, but its destiny. The Song of Fire begins anew. In the frozen north, the Night's Watch prepares for its own journey. With the realm in disarray, Lord Commander Mormont leads a great ranging beyond the wall to investigate the disturbing reports of missing rangers and rumors of wildlings gathering under a single banner. Jon Snow, now Mormont's steward and companion, rides with them. The vast haunted forest stretches ahead like a mouth waiting to swallow them whole. Ghost, ever alert, senses what men cannot. As the men ride deeper into the wilderness, they discover strange signs, abandoned villages, dead wildlings left untouched by scavengers, and the fear of something worse prowling in the dark. The others, once thought to be legend, are hinted at in these silent woods. Mormont knows something stirs, and his grim determination carries the watch forward. Jon watches and listens, his loyalty to the Night's Watch binding him even as his heart remains tied to the fate of the Starks. Tyrion Lannister, far from the capital, travels with his father Tywin as part of the Lannister war effort. At the Battle of the Green Fork, he fights alongside a clan of mountain savages he won to his cause during his imprisonment in the Vale. He proves himself in the chaos, surviving the melee and demonstrating once again that brains, not brawn, keep a Lannister alive. When news of James' capture reaches them, Tywin is furious but pragmatic. He sends Tyrion to King's Landing with a surprising command: serve as Hand of the King in his stead. Tyrion's sharp wit and sharp tongue are now placed at the heart of power. With the capital teetering on the edge of anarchy under Cersei and Joffrey, Tyrion must navigate the most dangerous battlefield of all, politics. His arrival in King's Landing marks the beginning of a new game, one played with whispers, gold, and secrets. And this time, he holds the dice. As war spreads like wildfire across the Seven Kingdoms, dragons stir in the east, and ancient evils awaken in the frozen north. The great lords make their moves, the banners rise, and the lines between hero and villain blur. In the realm of thrones, every man is a piece, every woman a player, and the only certainty is that winter is coming. The realm, now splintered and bleeding, reels from the rising chaos. With Eddard Stark gone, and the banners of rebellion flying in every corner of Westeros, the delicate balance that once held the kingdoms together has collapsed into open war. In King's Landing, the lion's den grows darker by the day. Tyrion Lannister, newly appointed as Hand of the King by his father Tywin, arrives not with pomp, but with purpose. He wastes no time asserting control, quickly gauging the court's true power dynamics. Cersei, still clinging to authority through her son's crown, bristles at Tyrion's presence. Their sibling rivalry, long simmering beneath veils of wit and barbed words, begins to take on a more dangerous shape as Tyrion begins removing those who pose a threat to the realm's tenuous stability and to his own life. He understands what few others seem willing to admit. Joffrey's cruelty is not merely unbecoming of a king, it is incendiary. The boy's arrogance and sadism have sown unrest in the city, where the small folk whisper of starvation, injustice, and madness on the Iron Throne. With Lord Varys spinning his silky webs, Petyr Baelish weaving intrigues for his own gain, and Grand Maester Pycelle playing the doddering fool, Tyrion maneuvers through this nest of vipers with sharp pragmatism. He enlists the aid of Bronn, the sellsword with a taste for gold and survival, and begins reshaping the King's Guard and small council. Underneath it all, Tyrion begins laying traps, not just for enemies of the crown, but to identify traitors within his inner circle. His mind is a battlefield, and every whisper he hears becomes a weapon. Far to the west, the Riverlands remain a land of scorched earth and sieges. Robb Stark, the newly proclaimed king in the north, continues to outmaneuver the Lannisters. His victories at Whispering Wood and Oxcross earn him respect among allies and fear among foes. Yet for all his battlefield brilliance, Robb remains a boy thrust too early into the mantle of command. He must learn that war is not just won by swords, but by alliances, and those often come at great cost. Catelyn Stark knows this all too well. Seeking to bring more houses to her son's cause, she rides to treat with Renly Baratheon, whose self-proclaimed kingship grows stronger under the bright banners of Highgarden. The Tyrells provide Renly with an army, but what they offer in numbers they lack in discipline. Renly is charming and beloved, but his claim lacks legitimacy. Still, he believes that kingship is his destiny. Catelyn, wise and weary, tries to unite the brothers against the true threat, the Lannisters. But pride and prophecy stand in her way. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon prepares to strike. Cold, relentless, and bound by rigid honor, Stannis will not yield what he believes to be rightfully his. Unlike Renly, Stannis has the truth on his side. Joffrey, Tommen, and Miachella are not Robert's children. They are the spawn of incest, a monstrous lie wrapped in silken cloaks. But truth alone does not win battles. Stannis places his faith in Melisandre, the Red Priestess, whose power defies reason and whose god, Arlor, demands fire for favor. In the dead of night, Melisandre births a creature of shadow, conjured in agony and blood. Sent into Renly's camp, this smoky assassin slips past armor and guards alike, and with a single stroke, ends a king's life before battle ever begins. Renly collapses, his throat opening wide in a gasp of betrayal. Panic and chaos follow. Catelyn and Brienne of Tarth, Renly's loyal protector and secret admirer, flee for their lives, branded as murderers. Brienne swears herself to Catelyn, a vow forged in grief and blood. With Renly's death, many of his bannermen bend the knee to Stannis, while others scatter like leaves in the wind. The road to King's Landing opens, and Stannis marches to claim his prize. In the capital, Tyrion scrambles to prepare defenses. The city is unready, its walls old and manned by green recruits and sellswords. Supplies dwindle, tempers flare, and the specter of siege looms heavy. Beyond the wall, Jon Snow and the Night's Watch continue their great ranging. The farther they ride, the more disturbing the signs become. Wildling villages lie abandoned, some seemingly untouched by violence, others showing signs of slaughter without explanation. The name Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, is spoken more often. Once a brother of the Night's Watch, Mance has united the wildlings under a single banner, an unprecedented feat. But it is not conquest he seeks. It is survival. Something older, colder, and far more terrible than wildling raids is awakening in the north. At Craster's Keep, the men of the Watch find shelter with a loathsome ally. Craster, a cruel man with many wives, who are also his daughters, offers uneasy hospitality. But his dark secret hangs in the icy air. He sacrifices his newborn sons to the others, keeping the creatures at bay in exchange for survival. Jon, disgusted, struggles with the burden of this knowledge, but knows the Watch must press on. Old powers stir in the frost, and they are no longer myths. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen wanders the red wastes with her small band of followers. Her dragons, still young and weak, are symbols of awe and hope, but they cannot feed her people. The desert stretches endlessly, and many die of thirst or despair. Salvation arrives in the form of Qarth, a city of splendor and secrets. The greatest city that ever was or will be opens its gates, and Dany is welcomed as a curiosity, a foreign queen with living dragons. Among the opulent towers and jeweled courtyards, Daenerys meets Zero Exhone Daxos, a wealthy merchant who offers her riches and marriage, promising power and protection. But his motives are veiled. Others come with offers, each with a price. The warlocks of the House of the Undying lure her with visions and riddles, seeking to ensnare her. Dany learns quickly that Qarth is not a place of safety, but of ambition and lies. Her dragons are her strength, but they are also her vulnerability. As she navigates the politics of a foreign land, Daenerys begins to shed the last layers of the girl she once was. Her resolve hardens. She dreams not just of survival, but of conquest. She sees now that the world will not give her power, she must take it. Fire and blood are her birthright, and if she is to cross the sea and claim the throne, she must become something greater than a mere Targaryen heir. From the Iron Islands to the Stormlands, from the frost-bitten wall to the sun-blasted east, the storm of King's brews. Ambition, revenge, prophecy, and fear pull every thread tighter. threatening to strangle what remains of peace. The Game of Thrones has no pause, no mercy, and no guarantee of justice. As banners fall and rise, as brothers kill and queens conspire, the world slides closer to an age of ruin, and only those who understand its cruel rules may survive the storm that is coming. With the war for the throne reaching its boiling point, the various factions in Westeros prepare for what seems to be an inevitable clash of powers. But each must face their own demons, some literal, some metaphorical, before they can reach the ultimate goal of domination. King's Landing remains an ever-tightening trap. Tyrion Lannister, now entrenched as the Hand of the King, stands at the center of a city that's increasingly becoming a powder keg. The shadow of Stannis Baratheon's army grows ever larger, and the Lannisters' hold on the capital grows more tenuous by the hour. Despite his bitter rivalry with his sister Cersei and his deep disdain for the cruelty of his nephew Joffrey, Tyrion works tirelessly to ensure the city's defenses are bolstered, employing a mixture of cunning, manipulation, and strategic brilliance. His mind works as a razor-sharp weapon, carefully considering every move on the chessboard. His ability to outwit his enemies and keep those in power at bay proves invaluable, especially as the city braces itself for siege. The streets are thick with tension, and the whispers of rebellion fill the air as Joffrey's rule grows more erratic. Tyrion, however, is not without enemies, and even within his own family, he must navigate dangerous waters. The scheming Cersei continues to plot against him, not just in the shadows, but in full view, her actions growing ever more erratic as she desperately tries to protect her children and maintain her power. Tyrion knows that, like the others in King's Landing, she is playing a dangerous game, one in which the stakes are the throne itself, and those who lose will not just fall from grace, but fall to death. But Cersei is not alone in her desire to see Tyrion undone. Petyr Baelish, ever the manipulator, continues his own quiet dance of ambition, building alliances and plotting his own rise, regardless of who he must betray to achieve it. Meanwhile, Robb Stark's rise as king in the North continues to outshine all expectations. After the shocking death of his father, Eddard Stark, Robb took the mantle of leadership, leading his armies with an unflinching sense of duty and justice that had his bannermen flocking to his banner. His victories over the Lannisters continue to ring out as triumphs of both strategy and moral authority, capturing the admiration of many who had once seen the Stark family as a northern curiosity at best. But Robb is not immune to the complexities of war. His youth, his inexperience, and his idealism sometimes blind him to the nuances of politics, and he is drawn into a series of decisions that could jeopardize everything he's fought for. The most complicated and painful of these decisions revolves around his marriage. Robb, torn between love and duty, finds himself embroiled in a relationship that could have catastrophic consequences for his cause. His affection for the widow, Talisa Meager, whose family was slaughtered by the Lannisters during the war, leads him to a promise of marriage, defying the pact he had made with House Frey. Robb's emotional entanglement puts him at odds with his mother, Catelyn Stark, who understands the importance of the alliances forged by marriage and sees her son's youthful passion as a threat to the Stark cause. The decision to break the marriage pact with House Frey will not only hurt the Stark family's political standing, but will also sow the seeds for treachery and ruin in the future. Yet in the heart of the conflict, where the banners of kings fly high and the drums of war beat steadily, Robb's inner turmoil is just one of the many facets of a story marked by personal sacrifice and the unyielding march toward a brutal destiny. Each decision made is a step closer to the treacherous landscape of war, where betrayal is as common as loyalty, and every ally has the potential to become a mortal enemy. In the Riverlands, Catelyn Stark's personal journey takes a darker turn. Haunted by the brutal murder of her father and brother in the wake of the war, and frustrated by the Lannisters' grip on the throne, Catelyn's decisions become increasingly desperate. She takes matters into her own hands, desperately trying to safeguard Robb's cause, even if it means crossing moral lines. Her actions, though motivated by a desire to protect her children, begin to reflect the very same ruthlessness that she so despises in others. Catelyn's story is one of a mother's love turned bitter by the ever-widening chasm between honor and survival, and it sets the stage for her own harrowing future. Further to the north, Jon Snow's journey beyond the Wall becomes a matter of life and death, as he and the members of the Night's Watch grow more entangled with the mysteries of the far north. The Wall, once a symbol of order and protection, has become a frontier fraught with danger and ancient threats. Jon and his fellow brothers must not only contend with the wildlings who threaten the peace of the realm, but also with the true terror that stirs in the cold, dark places of the world, the ancient threat of the White Walkers. The cold, slow awakening of these creatures from the far north is an impending doom that no one in the Seven Kingdoms fully understands. Jon's loyalty to the Night's Watch is tested again and again as he finds himself torn between the duty of his sworn oath and the undeniable pull of his heritage. Though he was raised by Eddard Stark as a Stark, Jon knows little of his true parentage. But as he travels further into the icy wastes, he begins to glimpse the greater forces that govern the world, the forces that have been sleeping for thousands of years. And that will soon awaken in full force. His journey is as much an exploration of self as it is a mission of survival. And it is here that Jon will come to face the full weight of what lies beyond the Wall. While Robb Stark and Jon Snow's struggles revolve around the fate of the North, Daenerys Targaryen's journey in the East unfolds against the backdrop of a rapidly changing world. With her dragons now growing stronger, Daenerys' ambition shifts from survival to conquest. She understands that she cannot reclaim the throne with just a few followers and a handful of dragons. She must build an army. Daenerys' time in Qarth serves as a harsh reminder of the complex nature of politics, and she learns quickly that the game she must play is far more dangerous than anything she could have anticipated. Her connection with her dragons grows ever stronger, and as their power grows, so too does her resolve. But Daenerys must balance the desire for vengeance with the necessity of building alliances and understanding the complex nature of power. While she may be the last hope for the Targaryen legacy, she soon discovers that the path to the throne will require not just fire and blood, but wisdom, tact, and the ability to see beyond personal desires. As the various factions continue to vie for control over the Iron Throne, one thing becomes clear. There are no easy victories in the Game of Thrones. Allies are fleeting, and enemies are never far behind. every decision, no matter how small, can lead to profound consequences. It is a game of survival, one in which the rules shift with every passing moment, and the only constant is that power once seized is difficult to hold on to. In this world, kings and queens may fall just as easily as they rise, and the price of ambition is steep. In the shadow of political machinations and the looming threat of war, the story of the Stark family grows ever more tragic as the North is torn between loyalty, betrayal, and the unyielding call for survival. The fate of Robb Stark, now king in the North, hangs in the balance as his war against the Lannisters continues to gain momentum, even as the seeds of betrayal are sown within his ranks. The kingdom of the North is not only being divided by external threats, but is being slowly corroded from within, with every passing day adding weight to Robb's decisions. The most significant of these decisions is his broken marriage pact with House Frey, a choice that sets in motion a chain of events that will change the course of history in the North. Robb's youthful arrogance and love for Talisa Meager blind him to the cold, harsh reality of the world in which he must operate. By reneging on the arranged marriage with House Frey, Robb makes a powerful enemy, one whose vengeance will have devastating consequences for him and his family. The betrayal is not just political, it is deeply personal, and it echoes across the Stark family in ways that will resonate for generations to come. As the war intensifies, Robb's mother, Catelyn Stark, becomes a key player in this ongoing tragedy. After the death of her husband, Eddard Stark, and the capture of her daughters by the Lannisters, Catelyn's perspective on the war shifts. Her primary focus is no longer just on winning battles, but on ensuring the survival and safety of her children. In a desperate move to safeguard her son's interests, Catelyn takes matters into her own hands, abducting the Kingslayer, Jaime Lannister, in a bid to bargain for her daughter's release. This decision, though driven by a mother's love, only serves to further entrench the Stark family in a deadly game of diplomacy, vengeance, and political maneuvering. Catelyn's actions, though understandable, create divisions among Robb's bannermen, many of whom view her as a liability rather than an asset to their cause. Her obsession with revenge against the Lannisters blurs her judgment, and she becomes more willing to make choices that she might not have otherwise considered. At one point, she even sides with the controversial character of Lord Walder Frey, a man who has a reputation for betrayal, in an attempt to force the Lannisters to negotiate. But Frey's treachery proves even more dangerous than Catelyn could have anticipated, and her decisions begin to unravel the very fabric of the Stark cause. As Robb's forces continue to wage war, the Kingdom of the North grows ever more unstable, a fragile kingdom under the shadow of the Lannisters' might. Robb's decisions are dictated by the tides of war, but his personal choices are equally influenced by the dynamics of family loyalty, love, and the bitter realization that the Starks may not be able to recover from the losses they've already sustained. His role as king in the North becomes increasingly complicated, and the very ideals he has fought for seem to be slipping away, with betrayal and ambition clouding the path forward. Meanwhile, Jon Snow's journey beyond the Wall continues to reveal the haunting realities of the world's most dangerous frontier. As a member of the Night's Watch, Jon remains bound by his vows to defend the realm against the ancient threats that lie beyond the Wall. Yet as the growing menace of the White Walkers becomes more apparent, Jon finds himself drawn into a larger conflict than the one between the living and the dead. The wildlings, a nomadic people who live in the far reaches of the north, are not simply barbarians. They are survivors, desperate to escape the forces that threaten to destroy them all. Jon's relationship with the wildlings is complicated. He understands their desperation, but as a sworn member of the Night's Watch, he also knows that they represent a threat to the realm. His journey north reveals the complexity of survival in the harshest conditions, and he is faced with increasingly difficult choices. His duty to the Watch and to the realm clashes with the empathy he feels for those who live on the fringes of society. Yet Jon also understands that the true battle lies not between the wildlings and the Night's Watch, but between the living and the ancient forces that have begun to stir once more. Jon's growing understanding of the White Walkers and their sinister role in the world's forgotten history becomes central to the overall narrative. As Jon's journey deepens into the cold wastelands beyond the Wall, he comes face to face with the terrifying reality that humanity's survival is at stake. The struggle for the Iron Throne, though intense, becomes secondary to the far more existential battle against the creatures that dwell in the icy darkness. Beyond the Wall, the themes of loyalty and identity take on new dimensions. Jon is forced to question where his true loyalties lie. Raised as a Stark, he struggles with his status as a bastard in the eyes of society. His sense of duty to the Watch, which was once clear and simple, becomes far more complicated as he uncovers truths about his heritage and the responsibilities he must bear. In this frozen wilderness, where life and death hang by a thread, Jon realizes that survival may depend on forging alliances with those he once considered enemies. Simultaneously, Daenerys Targaryen's journey unfolds in the distant land of Essos. Daenerys, once an exiled princess with little hope of reclaiming her family's throne, grows in strength and power as she gathers followers and develops her skills as a leader. Her story continues to be marked by her quest for vengeance against those who wronged her family and the deepening relationship with her dragons. These creatures, once small and fragile, begin to grow into powerful forces, symbolic of Daenerys' own transformation from a girl with a dream to a force that could shape the future of Westeros. But as Daenerys becomes more determined in her pursuit of the throne, she is forced to contend with the complexities of ruling, building alliances, and mastering the intricate game of politics. Her time in Slaver's Bay is pivotal as she is forced to face the brutal realities of power, and she begins to learn that the road to reclaiming the Iron Throne is not just about fire and blood, but about wisdom, strategy, and strength of character. Each of the characters, whether they are from the north, the Wall, or the far reaches of Essos, faces their own trials. And through these trials, we see the emergence of the book's core themes: the cost of power, the weight of loyalty, the price of vengeance, and the unyielding march of destiny. The world that Martin has created is vast, filled with characters whose motivations are as complex and multifaceted as the realm itself. As the political intrigues continue to unfold, as alliances are forged and broken, and as ancient evils stir in the cold north, the fate of Westeros seems more uncertain than ever. In this world, where the strong are tested and the weak are crushed, the line between hero and villain becomes increasingly blurred. And all the while, the looming shadow of winter grows ever nearer. The journey through the ever-evolving world of Westeros takes yet another dark turn as the power struggles intensify, and each character grapples with their own personal demons and the harsh realities of the world they inhabit. The ever-expanding conflict between the various factions, each vying for control of the Iron Throne, becomes increasingly brutal, and the impact of their decisions begins to reverberate throughout the Seven Kingdoms. With alliances shifting, loyalties betrayed, and the relentless march of war claiming more lives with each passing day, the stakes are raised to unprecedented levels. As Robb Stark's position as king in the North continues to falter, the consequences of his earlier decisions become increasingly apparent. The broken marriage pact with House Frey, a decision that seemed motivated by youthful defiance, now sets in motion one of the most catastrophic events for the Stark family, the infamous Red Wedding. The betrayal orchestrated by Lord Walder Frey in concert with the Lannisters is a devastating blow to Robb's campaign and to the very survival of the Stark lineage. The massacre that takes place during this ill-fated event is not just a political maneuver. It is an emotional and personal destruction of a family that has already endured so much. Robb's death, alongside that of his mother, Catelyn Stark, marks the tragic end of the Starks' fleeting hope for vengeance against the Lannisters. This event, which is as shocking as it is brutal, sends ripples throughout the realm, altering the balance of power in ways that are difficult to comprehend. For the Stark children, this betrayal sets them on divergent paths, each marked by their own struggle for survival and identity. Arya, who had already begun her journey toward vengeance, becomes even more hardened by the events of the Red Wedding. Her transformation from a curious and brave young girl into a lethal and vengeful force is catalyzed by the bloodshed she witnesses. Meanwhile, the remaining Stark children, Sansa, Bran, and Rickon, continue to experience the trauma of a fractured family. Sansa, once the naive and hopeful daughter of Eddard Stark, is now forced to mature far beyond her years. Under the cruel tutelage of the Lannisters, she faces a daily struggle to retain her identity, while also adapting to the intricacies of court politics. Sansa's journey is one of growth, where she learns to manipulate the Game of Thrones in her own way, while simultaneously holding on to the hope that one day she will reunite with her family. Her alliances and survival tactics continue to evolve as she navigates the treacherous waters of the Lannister-controlled capital. On the Wall, Jon Snow's transformation continues as he rises through the ranks of the Night's Watch, taking on increasingly important responsibilities as he uncovers the dire threats that lie beyond the Wall. The knowledge of the ancient, ice-cold forces that threaten all of humanity weighs heavily on him. But Jon also learns that the challenges within the Wall are just as dangerous. The uneasy alliances he has forged with the wildlings only add to the complexity of his position. Jon's belief in duty and honor is continually tested, and as he becomes entangled in the larger conflict between the living and the dead, his personal identity is called into question. In particular, Jon's leadership within the Night's Watch reaches a critical juncture as he faces the stark realization that the Wall itself is in grave danger. The very real threat of the White Walkers is no longer something distant and mythical, but is now a present, undeniable force that requires immediate attention. The The reality of the ancient darkness that lies beyond the wall is a force Jon can no longer ignore. But in doing so, he risks fracturing his already tenuous ties with his fellow men of the Night's Watch. Jon's attempts to unite his brothers in arms for the coming war against the supernatural threat are met with reluctance, suspicion, and ultimately treachery. As the tensions rise within the Night's Watch, Jon's relationship with the wildlings becomes even more strained. The decision to trust them, to fight alongside them against the White Walkers, is one that alienates him from his brothers at the Wall. Jon's identity as a Stark bastard and his role within the Watch are no longer as clear-cut as they once were. His growing recognition of his own potential as a leader, along with his uneasy understanding of the dire necessity of the wildlings' help, marks a turning point in his evolution as a character. Jon's path is far from simple, and as he navigates the politics of the Wall, he also wrestles with the moral ambiguity of his choices. Meanwhile, Daenerys Targaryen's story in the East continues to unfold as she moves closer to fulfilling her destiny. Her journey from the vulnerable exiled princess to the powerful mother of dragons is as much about reclaiming her family's lost throne as it is about learning what it means to lead. With the support of her growing army, Daenerys takes on the slave cities of Essos, using fire and blood to free the oppressed people and add to her ranks. But as her army swells, Daenerys begins to confront the complexity of her rule. The people she frees are not all grateful, and those who support her cause do so with different motivations. Daenerys must learn how to govern, and she is quickly confronted with the harsh realities of ruling with strength and compassion in a world where power is often more important than ideals. In Slaver's Bay, Daenerys' conflict with the slavers continues to escalate, and her path toward the Iron Throne becomes more fraught with moral and political complexities. Though she aims to break the chains of the oppressed, she soon finds that leadership demands difficult compromises. Her increasingly complex relationships with her allies, like the cunning Daario Naharis and the loyal Grey Worm, further complicate her journey. She must grapple with questions of loyalty, sacrifice, and the personal cost of power, all while her dragons grow more dangerous and uncontrollable, a reflection of her own struggle with power. The political maneuverings of King's Landing grow even more treacherous as the Lannisters continue to cement their control over the Iron Throne. Tyrion Lannister, ever the master of wit and strategy, finds himself caught in a dangerous web of lies, deceit, and family intrigue. Though he holds a position of power, Tyrion is continuously undermined by those around him, and the more he uncovers about his family's machinations, the more isolated he becomes. Tyrion's role in the Lannister family dynamics is essential, and his intelligence and ability to manipulate events are crucial to the survival of his family. Though his own sense of morality often causes friction with his relatives. Ultimately, the story continues to unfold with shifting allegiances and uncertain outcomes, as characters struggle to navigate their personal paths and the bloody battle for the Iron Throne. They must also confront larger forces, ancient, supernatural ones, that threaten to consume all of Westeros. From the icy frontiers of the Wall to the burning deserts of Essos, the characters' journeys interweave in a world where nothing is certain, and the cost of ambition and power is unavoidably steep. As the brutal conflict for the Iron Throne progresses, the fates of the key players who are bound to the land's unyielding politics, family legacies, and personal ambitions, reach new and devastating heights. With each character struggling to reconcile their desires with the harsh realities of Westeros, the sense of doom and inevitability becomes more palpable. In this final chapter of A Game of Thrones, the intricate web of alliances, betrayals, and revelations pulls tight, shaping the future of the Seven Kingdoms. Every action taken now feels like the tipping point of an epic conflict, one where even the most heroic of deeds may result in unforeseen consequences. As the Stark family's fate continues to intertwine with the world's larger conflicts, the death of Robb Stark and his mother at the Red Wedding leaves a permanent scar on the North. For Arya Stark, the pain and trauma of that massacre fuel her determination to reclaim vengeance for her family. Alone, lost, and now even more hardened, Arya's path becomes one marked by personal transformation. From a young girl searching for justice to a cold and deadly force, Arya's experiences throughout the story shape her understanding of power, vengeance, and the cost of survival. While her journey seems solitary, it is guided by the belief that the end justifies the means, even if the end is far from certain. In King's Landing, the battle for control over the throne continues to involve the cunning and ruthless Lannisters, with Tywin Lannister's presence still looming large over the kingdom. Tyrion Lannister, always trapped between the ambition of his family and his own moral compass, struggles to navigate the political chessboard of the capital. Despite his wit, intelligence, and resourcefulness, Tyrion's loyalty to his family, especially to his sister, Cersei, is constantly tested. The twisted relationships within the Lannister family come to a head as Tyrion finds himself thrust into the position of an accused murderer after the death of his nephew, King Joffrey Baratheon. The death of King Joffrey, one of the most despised and tyrannical figures in the realm, causes an uproar that ripples through Westeros. Tyrion's trial is a moment of reckoning for the entire Lannister family. As the battle for the throne rages on, the tension between power, loyalty, and justice grows unbearable. With Tyrion's fate in the balance, the court is forced to confront the moral dilemmas that have been festering for years. The question of whether the true nature of power lies in ruthless tyranny, or whether, at its core, it should be a force for justice and protection of the people. Tyrion's eventual escape from King's Landing is as much an act of survival as it is a rejection of the power structures that have kept him trapped in a world defined by corruption and family expectations. Simultaneously, across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's story continues its course toward rebellion, freedom, and conquest. After liberating the slave cities of Essos, she now faces the challenges of governance. Despite her idealistic dreams of creating a better world, Daenerys realizes that to rule is far more complicated than she imagined. The lives of the people she has freed are not easily won over, and even her closest allies have conflicting interests. As she marches on toward the Iron Throne, Daenerys must confront the personal cost of her ambition. Her dragons, symbols of her birthright and strength, become both a source of power and an uncontrollable threat. The fire and blood that she wields come at a steep price, and Daenerys' internal struggle between her compassionate intentions and the brutal reality of war becomes a key theme in her journey. Back in the North, Jon Snow's leadership continues to be tested as the danger from beyond the wall grows ever more imminent. Jon, having risen to the position of Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, faces the ultimate test of leadership, uniting the men of the Watch with the wildlings to fight the common threat, the White Walkers. The long-standing tension between the free folk and the men of the Night's Watch, who once swore to defend the wall from the wildlings, now seems like a trivial concern in light of the ancient threat that is about to overrun them all. Jon's decision to trust the wildlings, to build alliances across an ancient divide, places him at odds with his sworn brothers, further isolating him. Jon's identity and motivations are questioned as he continues to battle not only external threats, but also his internal conflict. His journey has evolved from a bastard's desire for belonging to a leader who understands that his ultimate responsibility lies in preserving life against a threat that could destroy everything. Jon, grappling with the immense weight of his choices, realizes that the fight for the Iron Throne may pale in comparison to the battle against the White Walkers. The survival of the living, and not just the pursuit of power, becomes his driving force. His relationship with the wildlings, particularly with the fierce Ygritte, shapes his worldview, forcing him to confront his own biases and preconceived notions about people from different walks of life. As the world begins to recognize the true threat that lies beyond the wall, the realization sets in: the battles fought for political power, the bloodshed and betrayals for the Iron Throne, are nothing compared to the ancient force waiting to consume them all. The Night King and his army of the undead are not just a threat to the North, they are a threat to all of humanity. In this moment, characters from every corner of the realm must begin to understand that their personal ambitions, no matter how grand, may not matter in the face of an apocalyptic enemy. As Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and Tyrion Lannister all struggle to come to terms with their roles, they are each forced to confront the consequences of their actions, both past and present. Ultimately, A Game of Thrones is not simply a story about the quest for power. It is a tale about the complexity of leadership, the moral compromises made in the pursuit of survival, and the inevitable consequences of ambition. The theme of the human struggle between honor and betrayal, loyalty and deception, reigns supreme throughout the book. And the world of Westeros is built upon the collision of these contrasting ideals. As each character fights for their place in a world constantly on the edge of chaos, their personal journeys are shaped by the brutal lessons they must learn. It is a world where no one is truly safe, and where every victory is tainted by the weight of sacrifice. The impact of A Game of Thrones is profound. Not only has it captured the imagination of readers around the world, but it has also shaped the very fabric of contemporary fantasy literature. George R.R. Martin's exploration of power dynamics, human nature, and the price of ambition has elevated the genre to new heights, and its influence can be seen in countless works that followed. The harsh truths of Westeros remind us that, in a world driven by the pursuit of power, only those who are willing to make the hardest choices can hope to survive. As the story unfolds, the stakes continue to rise, and the inevitable truth becomes clear. In the Game of Thrones, you either win or you die. A Game of Thrones stands as a towering achievement in fantasy literature. A masterful blend of intricate world building, complex character development, and profound philosophical questions. George R. Martin's exploration of power, honor, betrayal, and survival unfolds across a canvas so vast that it transcends the boundaries of traditional fantasy. The novel doesn't just chronicle the pursuit of a throne, but delves deep into the human condition, showing the complexity of moral choices, the consequences of ambition, and the ever-present shadow of mortality. The significance of A Game of Thrones lies not only in its unpredictable plot twists, but also in its willingness to subvert the conventions of fantasy. Unlike many epic tales where the lines between good and evil are clearly drawn, Martin presents a world where the characters, both heroes and villains, are multidimensional, capable of acts of both immense cruelty and surprising kindness. This grayness of morality is part of what makes the story so compelling. The characters' motivations are not always clear-cut, and their actions often lead to unintended, far-reaching consequences, reminding readers that the thirst for power often comes at a price that even the most noble hearts must reckon with. The book's exploration of family, loyalty, and identity is central to the emotional core of the narrative. Characters like Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, and Tyrion Lannister embody different facets of what it means to belong to something greater than oneself, whether that is the duty to one's family, the weight of personal identity, or the desire for justice and revenge. Yet, the ultimate lesson of A Game of Thrones is that the personal desires of its characters are constantly at odds with the larger forces of fate and destiny that shape the world they inhabit. The realm of Westeros itself is a character in its own right, brutal, unforgiving, and unyielding. The shifting power dynamics between families like the Starks, Lannisters, and Targaryens, alongside the growing threat of the White Walkers from beyond the Wall, paint a picture of a land constantly teetering on the edge of destruction. It is a world where every action, no matter how small, can tip the scales toward either salvation or ruin. The brutal realism of this world, where noble heroes fall as easily as treacherous villains, forces readers to confront the harsh truths about the nature of power and the lengths people will go to in order to claim it. In addition to its dark and gritty storytelling, A Game of Thrones has ignited conversations about politics, power, and justice in the real world. Its portrayal of the corrupting influence of authority, the manipulation of public perception, and the manipulation of the masses resonates deeply in contemporary discussions about governance, inequality, and the complexities of human nature. The show's success in adapting the novel further cemented its impact on popular culture, giving it a global audience that continues to resonate with the themes Martin crafted in his epic series. The legacy of A Game of Thrones extends beyond just the pages of the book. It has reshaped the fantasy genre, opening doors for stories that are darker, more complex, and less reliant on clear distinctions between good and evil. As the story evolves across the series, Martin's commitment to unpredictability and moral ambiguity ensures that readers remain captivated by the ever-shifting tides of power, loyalty, and survival. Ultimately, A Game of Thrones serves as a meditation on the nature of leadership, the fragility of power, and the unpredictable course of history. Each character, from the noble to the corrupt, is forced to reckon with the cost of their actions and the legacy they will leave behind. It reminds us that the Game of Thrones is not merely a battle for a seat of power, but a reflection of the broader human struggle, where loyalty, honor, and betrayal all play a part, and where the quest for control can destroy even the most well-laid plans. In the end, A Game of Thrones offers a story that is as timeless as it is captivating, a reminder that in the pursuit of power, there are always unforeseen consequences, and that the greatest challenges often lie not in the battlefield, but within the hearts of those who fight.